Do you think Cujo was just another horror novel that Stephen King conjured from his imagination? What if I told you the truth behind this iconic story has been deliberately obscured for decades? The real events that inspired King's novel are far more disturbing than fiction and far more dangerous to discuss openly. In the summer of 1979, a series of unexplained animal attacks occurred in rural Maine that defied conventional explanation. These incidents were systematically covered up by local authorities, documented only in sealed police reports and the hushed whispers of traumatized witnesses. Tonight, I'm going to reveal what really happened. The connections, the pattern, the truth. The official story claims King was simply inspired by a minor incident with an unfriendly St. Bernard at a mechanic's shop. A convenient explanation. Tidy, safe, wrong. The first documented incident occurred on June 17, 1977, in the small town of Castle Rock, Maine, a name King would later appropriate for his fictional setting. Local resident Marian Everson reported that her previously gentle family dog, a mixed-breed retriever named Cooper, had suddenly and inexplicably become aggressive. According to the incident report filed with the Castle County Sheriff's Department, case number 77-431, Cooper attacked Marian's husband without provocation, inflicting severe lacerations to his arm and face. What makes this case particularly disturbing were the veterinarian's notes, which I've obtained from records that were supposed to be destroyed in a convenient 1983 office fire. Dr. Thomas Brandywine documented that Cooper's behavior changed literally overnight. The dog's eyes showed unusual dilation, and its saliva contained unexplained chemical compounds that the local lab couldn't identify. The samples were allegedly sent to a state facility but never arrived. They vanished, just like every other piece of physical evidence in this case. Marian Everson told investigators something the official report omits. The night before Cooper's transformation, she had heard unusual sounds coming from the woods behind their property, described as mechanical clicking, followed by a low, pulsing hum. When officers investigated the area the following day, they documented finding a circular pattern of flattened grass, approximately 20 feet in diameter. The official explanation? Probable weather phenomenon. The photographs taken of the site were never filed with the official report. They're missing. They've always been missing. Cooper was euthanized 3 days later. His body was to be examined for rabies and other diseases, but records show it never arrived at the state laboratory. Another disappearance. Another piece of evidence gone. This could be dismissed as an isolated incident if it weren't for what happened next. Between July and October of 1977, 11 separate cases of domestic animal aggression were reported within a 15-mile radius of the original incident. 7 dogs, 3 cats, 1 horse, all previously docile animals, all transforming suddenly and violently, all attacking their owners or family members. In each case, witnesses reported the same distinctive behavioral changes: unusual eye dilation, excessive salivation, and a complete personality transformation that occurred without warning. Local authorities initially blamed rabies, then distemper, then parasites. Each theory was disproven by the limited testing that was performed before the evidence vanished. No disease could explain the simultaneity of the outbreak or its geographic concentration. No pathogen could account for the strange uniformity of symptoms across different species. The Castle County Health Department established a task force to investigate in September 1977, headed by Dr. Eleanor Ramsey. Her preliminary report noted something that should have made national headlines. Each affected animal had traces of an unidentified metallic substance in their blood. Spectrographic analysis showed similarities to titanium, but with unexplained properties that Ramsey described as inconsistent with known elements. Dr. Ramsey requested assistance from the CDC. Her request was denied. 2 days later, she was removed from the investigation. The official reason: budget constraints. The task force was disbanded a week later. Dr. Ramsey took a sudden sabbatical and relocated to Arizona. She never spoke publicly about her findings, never published her research. When I tried to contact her in 2019, I discovered she had died 3 years earlier under circumstances that remain unclear. The timing is interesting. 3 months before her death, I'd published a small article in an independent journal about these very incidents. Coincidence? Perhaps. By December 1977, the attacks had stopped as abruptly as they had begun. Local papers ran small stories about a seasonal rabies outbreak that had been successfully contained. Case closed, people moved on, they forgot. But something wasn't finished. In April 1978, a more disturbing pattern emerged. 3 children in the Castle Rock area reported seeing a large dog standing motionless at the edge of the woods near their homes. Each child described the same details independently. A Saint Bernard with strange eyes that didn't move like a normal dog. The children claimed the animal would stand perfectly still, watching them for hours. When adults investigated, they found nothing, except in one case where unusual paw prints were discovered. The prints showed a canine pattern, but with abnormal spacing and depth that suggested the animal had been bearing unusual weight. Local law enforcement dismissed these reports as children's imagination, amplified by stories of the previous year's incidents. No connection was officially established. Then came the Watson case. On June 4, 1978, exactly 1 year after the first animal transformation, Brett Watson's German Shepherd, Ranger, attacked and killed Watson's 4-year-old son in their backyard in Windham, Maine, approximately 20 miles from the original incident cluster. Watson's statement to police described a dog that wasn't Ranger anymore and had different eyes. The attack was brutal and sustained, with the dog exhibiting strength that the responding officer described as beyond what you'd expect, even from a dog in some kind of frenzy. The incident received minimal local coverage, a bizarre editorial decision given the horrific nature of the attack. The Watson family relocated within a month. The address they provided to forwarding services led to an empty lot in Pennsylvania. Ranger's body was supposedly sent for examination, but no records exist of any findings. Another missing piece. Another dead end. In my investigation, I discovered something the news never reported. 3 separate witnesses had seen a man in a dark sedan parked near the Watson property in the days before the attack. One witness described him taking photographs of the house. Another mentioned seeing him holding what looked like some kind of antenna. When this information was brought to the local police, it was dismissed as unrelated. No official investigation was conducted into the identity of this individual. The witness who provided the most detailed description of the man, Harriet Dunning, died in a single-car accident 2 weeks after speaking with a journalist about what she'd seen. The journalist's notes from their conversation were destroyed in what was ruled an accidental office fire. Patterns. Always patterns. By late 1978, the incidents had drawn the attention of a writer living in the area, Stephen King. Local records show that King made several inquiries to the Castle County Sheriff's Department about the animal attacks. He requested incident reports. He asked questions. The official line is that King was researching for a novel that would eventually become Cujo, published in 1981. But King's actual manuscript tells a different story. The original draft of Cujo, which I've obtained from a source who wishes to remain anonymous, contained details that never appeared in the published version, details that matched precisely with the sealed records of the actual incidents. Specific medical terminology from Dr. Ramsey's suppressed report, descriptions of the physical changes in the affected animals that were never made public. How did King know these details? The official explanation is that he simply invented them, coincidentally matched them to reality. Statistically impossible, but a convenient explanation for those who want this buried. 3 months into King's research, his inquiries suddenly stopped. His publisher announced he was working on a novel about a rabid dog. The real story, the metallic compounds, the pattern of geographic concentration, the unexplained sounds, the watching man, all of it vanished from his narrative. His novel became a simple tale of rabies and isolation, safe, marketable, unthreatening to those who wanted the truth concealed. King has never spoken directly about why he abandoned his investigation into the real incidents. In a 1982 interview that was printed only once and never republished, he made a cryptic statement. Some stories don't want to be told the way they really happened. Sometimes it's safer to turn them into fiction. Safer. For whom? The publication of Cujo in 1981 effectively buried the truth. The novel became the accepted narrative, overshadowing the actual events that had inspired it. Whenever anyone mentioned the real incidents, they were dismissed as confusing fiction with reality. The perfect cover-up turned the truth into published fiction, and no one will believe it really happened. But the pattern didn't stop. Between 1982 and 1987, similar clusters of animal transformations and attacks occurred in 6 different locations across New England. Each followed the same progression: unusual sounds reported in wooded areas, circular patterns of disturbed vegetation, domestic animals transforming suddenly and violently, local authorities providing inconsistent explanations, evidence disappearing, witnesses relocating or dying under questionable circumstances. Each cluster lasted approximately 4 months before abruptly stopping. Each was followed by a period of dormancy lasting between 8 months and 2 years. Each received minimal media attention and was ultimately attributed to conventional explanations: rabies, environmental toxins, parasites. None of these explanations accounted for the metallic compounds found in the affected animals' bloodstreams. None explained why the attacks followed such precise geographic and temporal patterns. None addressed why evidence consistently disappeared, or why witnesses so often recanted their statements after visits from unidentified health department officials. In 1988, a biology professor from the University of Maine named Dr. Alan Carrington began investigating these patterns independently. His research focused on the geographical distribution of the incidents, which he believed showed non-random clustering that suggested deliberate placement. Carrington published a single paper in an obscure academic journal, suggesting the animal transformations might be the result of targeted environmental manipulation for purposes of behavioral study. 3 weeks after publication, the journal printed a retraction, citing methodological errors in Carrington's research. The professor took an unexpected sabbatical the following semester. When he returned, he no longer discussed his research. When questioned by colleagues, he would change the subject. His field of study shifted from behavioral biology to plant genetics. He refused all interview requests until his death in 2013. I obtained Carrington's original research notes in 2017 through a Freedom of Information Act request that took 3 years to process. Most pages were heavily redacted, but one unaltered section contained a handwritten note. They're watching the watchers, using animals as proxies, testing response patterns, but why here? Why domestic animals? The next 15 pages were completely blacked out. Between 1990 and 2005, the pattern of incidents became more diffuse, but continued with remarkable consistency. Similar cases appeared across a wider geographic range: New Hampshire, Vermont, Western Massachusetts, always following the same progression. Always with the same unusual characteristics, always ending with official explanations that failed to address the core anomalies. In 2007, something changed. The incident stopped completely. For 3 years, no new cases matching the pattern were reported anywhere in New England. Investigators like myself wondered if whatever had been happening had finally concluded. We were wrong. In 2010, the pattern re-emerged, but with a disturbing evolution. The new incidents weren't concentrated in rural areas, but appeared in suburban communities throughout the Northeast. The affected animals now included not just pets, but local wildlife: raccoons, foxes, even deer. The transformation symptoms remained consistent: sudden behavioral changes, unusual eye dilation, excessive salivation, and extreme aggression. More concerning, the new wave of incidents included a previously unobserved phenomenon. Affected animals appeared to coordinate their movements. In Fairfield County, Connecticut, in April 2011, 5 separate witnesses reported seeing a group of affected dogs moving together, apparently communicating through subtle vocalizations. The dogs attacked in patterns that suggested tactical coordination. Official reports dismissed these accounts as mass hysteria and witness contamination. The evidence, as always, disappeared. Witnesses recanted, the pattern continued. In 2013, I established an anonymous tip line for people to report incidents matching the historical pattern. Within 6 months, I received over 200 reports from across the country. After filtering for credibility and consistency with the established pattern, 78 reports remained that appeared genuine. They came from 23 different states. The geographical expansion was troubling enough. More disturbing was that 42% of these reports included a new detail. Witnesses claimed to have seen unidentified individuals observing the affected animals from a distance. These observers were consistently described as official-looking men and women in dark clothing, often carrying equipment described as technological but unfamiliar. When witnesses approached these individuals, they would claim to be from animal control, the CDC, or various wildlife agencies. Their identification, when checked later, inevitably led to non-existent departments or offices that denied having personnel in the area. In October 2014, I compiled my findings into a comprehensive report and submitted it simultaneously to 3 journalists at major publications. None responded. When I followed up, each claimed never to have received my materials. When I sent the report again through certified mail, all 3 received it, and all 3 declined to pursue the story, citing nearly identical reasons: lack of verifiable evidence, concerns about source credibility, and editorial priorities. The coincidence was too perfect to be coincidence. I published my findings independently in January 2015 on a website dedicated to the investigation. Within 48 hours, the site experienced a catastrophic server failure that erased all data. The backup systems failed simultaneously. The hosting company could provide no explanation. I had no choice but to start over, which brings us to Stephen King's continued silence on the matter. King has written and spoken extensively about the inspirations behind most of his works, often acknowledging the real events or personal experiences that sparked his imagination. With Cujo, however, he maintains the simple story about a brief encounter with an unfriendly mechanic's dog. Nothing more, nothing deeper. Nothing about the pattern of incidents that preceded his novel. Nothing about his abandoned investigation. In 2018, I attempted to contact King directly about these matters. My letters went unanswered. My emails received automatic replies. When I approached him at a public signing event in Portland, Maine, security personnel intercepted me before I could ask my question. They knew my face. They were waiting for me, watching for me. The most recent development came in early 2023, when a former employee of a private research facility in western Maine contacted me through encrypted channels. The individual, whom I'll call Alex to protect their identity, claimed to have worked as a security guard at a facility that conducted research on behavioral modification through targeted neurochemical manipulation. According to Alex, the facility regularly received animals that had been involved in unexplained aggressive incidents. Alex described witnessing procedures where metallic compounds were extracted from these animals' brain tissue. The compound was referred to by a code name, CUJO-7. Alex provided photographs taken covertly on their phone, showing laboratory equipment and containment units designed for animals. Before I could arrange a meeting to obtain more information, Alex stopped responding to all communications. Their social media accounts were deleted. Their phone number was disconnected. They effectively vanished. 3 weeks later, local news reported that a fire had destroyed an abandoned research building in the exact location Alex had identified. The cause was ruled electrical malfunction. No mention was made of what the facility had previously been used for or who had owned it. County records showed the property belonged to a shell company that traced back to a holding group with connections to defense contractors. Patterns, always patterns. So what does all this mean? What connects these decades of incidents, cover-ups, and disappeared evidence? The metallic compound found in the affected animals points to artificial intervention, something manufactured and deliberately introduced. The geographic and temporal patterns suggest controlled testing. The observation by unidentified officials indicates monitoring and data collection, but to what end? Are we witnessing decades of secret behavioral research, testing of chemical compounds for military applications? Something more insidious related to population control methodologies? Or is there a deeper, more disturbing possibility that whatever began in Castle Rock in 1977 has been growing, evolving, and spreading beyond its creator's control? What's clear is that Stephen King encountered something in his research that frightened him enough to abandon his investigation and transform a disturbing reality into palatable fiction, something that continues to keep him silent decades later. The publication of Cujo didn't just provide entertainment for horror fans, it created the perfect cover story, the perfect misdirection. It transformed a pattern of inexplicable incidents into just another Stephen King story. When reality becomes fiction, those who speak the truth are dismissed as confusing the two, which is exactly what will happen to me and to you if you take this seriously. You'll be labeled confused, mistaken, unable to distinguish between King's novel and reality. That's how effective the cover-up has been. That's why I've hesitated to share this information publicly until now. But the pattern is accelerating. In the past 18 months, reports matching the historical signature have increased by 320%. They're no longer confined to the Northeast. Cases now appear throughout North America, with clusters emerging in the Pacific Northwest, the Southwest, and across the Midwest. More concerning still, the latest reports include a new detail: affected animals exhibiting behaviors that go beyond aggression, behaviors that suggest altered cognitive function. Witnesses describe dogs solving complex problems to reach targets, cats working in apparent coordination to disable home security systems, wildlife establishing perimeters around affected areas. The official explanations have evolved as well. No longer content with blaming rabies or environmental toxins, authorities now point to social media-driven mass delusion and anxiety responses to climate change. They're not even trying to make sense anymore. They're just providing people with something to repeat when they don't want to face what's happening. So why am I telling you this now? Because the pattern has changed again. Because something new is happening. In the past 6 months, 17 people who viewed or shared information about these incidents online have reported experiencing unusual phenomena in their homes. Electronics malfunctioning in specific patterns, sounds with no source, and most disturbing of all, their pets watching them, standing motionless for hours, following them from room to room, staring without blinking. Several have reported waking to find their dogs or cats standing over them in the night, eyes dilated, breathing altered, before suddenly returning to normal behavior when addressed. Others describe their pets gathering at windows or doors at specific times, as if waiting for something or someone. You might be thinking this is just an attempt to frighten you, to entertain you with a creepy story loosely connected to a famous novel. I understand that reaction. It's safer than the alternative, accepting that something is happening. Something that's been happening for decades, something that's growing. I've spent years tracking these patterns, collecting reports, interviewing witnesses, and attempting to assemble the fragments into a coherent picture. What I've found points to an inescapable conclusion. Cujo wasn't fiction inspired by reality. It was reality transformed into fiction to hide a truth too disturbing to acknowledge. And that truth is still unfolding around us. If you've read this far, you're already involved. You've been exposed to information that those responsible would prefer remained buried. Information that connects you to a pattern that spans decades and continues to evolve. Information that might already be changing how you perceive your surroundings and how they perceive you. Tonight, when your dog or cat watches you from across the room, look carefully at their eyes. Notice if they blink less frequently than normal. Pay attention to whether they respond to their name immediately or seem to pause as if processing the sound differently. Be aware of any changes in their movement patterns or attentiveness, and if you notice anything unusual, don't report it publicly. Don't post about it online. Don't tell authorities. They're not recording these incidents to help you. They're monitoring for awareness of the pattern, tracking who knows, watching the watchers. If you've experienced anything similar to what I've described, unusual animal behavior, unexplained sounds, unidentified observers, comment below with the phrase, "I'm watching carefully." No details, no descriptions of your experiences, just those 3 words. It will help me track how far the pattern has spread without exposing you individually. The truth behind Cujo isn't just a hidden history of unexplained incidents in rural Maine. It's an ongoing phenomenon that continues to evolve and spread. A phenomenon that may already be in your home, watching through familiar eyes, waiting for whatever comes next. Stephen King warned us the only way he could, by transforming the truth into fiction that would be dismissed as imagination. But those who know the pattern recognize his warning for what it was, what it is. Tonight, pay attention to the sounds outside your window, to the movements of your pets, to the way technology behaves around you. Be aware that knowing the pattern makes you part of it, that reading these words has connected you to something that's been unfolding for decades, something that might now be aware of you, watching, waiting.